Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give people like 1 minute to join, but I hope everybody's doing well. You want to hop in the chat and just say hi or tell us where you're coming from? Always love to know. And it's good to see people again. Okay. Whoop. Welcome, welcome. Well, I'll keep letting people in, but I know, we kind of timed this a little tight, so I'm going to get the ball rolling. My name is Kat Hadley, and I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm the director of the Great Economy Project. I know I've met most of you before, so it's just really good to see everybody again, and we're always happy to have you back. As a reminder during this event, we're going to have Dylan presenting, so if you can be on mute, that's great, and then we will absolutely have time for questions in the end. So just really excited for that. And in an exciting update, we're actually launching in Pennsylvania next month. So if you know anyone who's interested, we can drop the link for the Great Economy Project. You can sign up to have our in-person education series, just like, you guys went through in, Ann and Bob from Michigan. What area of Michigan? Okay, nice. Sorry. Very distracted by the chat, but so we're just really excited you're here. And sign up any friends that are looking. We're going to run an online cohort again soon, so if you have other people who want to go through the education, that's totally fine. And as always, if you have people that maybe just think, I already have this solid background in education and I want to jump into the action, feel free to just go ahead and get them involved and invite them to this link. So I'm going to hand it over to some coworkers that are in the room tonight. Adam, if you want to kick it off, that'd be great.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Really great to see such a large number of folks joining in. This is fantastic from all over the country, from coast to coast. And as a big sports fan, it reminds me of all of our current athletic conferences now are spanning from coast to coast, regardless of the names they're in. So it's great to see. We're keeping up with the expansion of the NCAA. Again, I'm Adam Schubert, and I am Chief of Staff at Patriotic Millionaires. And I have been working with Kat pretty much as I've joined with the GEP, the Great Economy Project, which is the predecessor to the American Deciders. And it's an extraordinary opportunity to bring folks from all over the country together to advocate for these incredibly important issues that we spend every day pushing forward, whether it's, as y'all know, the fair taxing of the wealthy to especially higher wages for working people. I just had an argument, not an argument, but a very intense discussion with a friend of my father's about whether people who work 40 hours a week ought to be able to feed their families. And it was a definite divide because I said, shouldn't 40 hours a week be enough? And he was like, no, they have to work as many as they ought to work. And I thought, well, that doesn't really sound like a good way to do business in our country, to demand such a, extra from some people when there is so much more that can be done. So it just reminds me of all the work that has to get done, but that's fine. That's why we're here. And I'm really pleased to be on this call and with this group of deciders. And as a reminder for those on here to also always go to our homepage, patrioticmillionaires.org. We have a lot of postings on there, blog postings, columns, different types of actions may be on there, links to our social media, and you can sign up there. There's a box to sign up, and we have a weekly column called A Closer Look, which gets deep into a chosen topic from our wonderful communication staff. And so feel free to go on there, sign up. Everything's, of course, absolutely free, and get some really in-depth commentary on some of the big issues that are a part of our issues, as well as go through the nation. Very complex things that are made very understandable. So take a moment and go into there. And I will move it over to say hi to Lee, who is truly our staffer on GEP as our campaign manager.
Hey everyone, my name is Lee Colliver. Excited to be here. I am the campaign manager for the Great Economy Project, helping put on the educational seminars that we have, as well as ramping up political actions we're all going to be taking. So thank you all for coming here and supporting and making a real change for America. I'm going to pass it over to Dylan.
Hey everybody. My name is Dylan Duso. I am the political director of Patriotic Millionaires. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm a little under the weather today, so if I sound like I just left a Vegas nightclub, I apologize. Um, all right. I got a quick presentation for you all day, and then we'll get into some action items. Let me remember how to use technology really quickly. All right. 45 days later, we are looking ahead to a shutdown threat in several weeks. I'm going to start off with oop, the good news, which is that Congress surprised most of us by avoiding a shutdown. This is a few hours to spare, thanks to most of the Democratic caucus, as well as some more moderate Republicans voting to move forward with a 45-day continuing resolution on Saturday. So what is in the continuing resolution is basically just an agreement to continue funding the government at current funding levels until November 17th. And Congress will basically have to try and agree to a new budget proposal and pass it before the November 17th, or do an additional continuing resolution, or we're going to be facing a shutdown again in 45 days. So just a quick review on what a continuing resolution is. Essentially, every year Congress is supposed to pass a budget for the federal government to keep it open. However, over the last 25 years, they have not passed their appropriations package before the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. And have relied on limited short-term spending agreements to essentially extend the deadline. That's what a continuing resolution is. Government agencies really don't like them. It creates a lot of problems for them in like future planning, expanding their hiring, etc. In the past 25 years, they've only failed to pass an appropriations package before April 30th one time. But I will note that is essentially halfway through the fiscal year, so that's not as impressive as it sounds. All right, what happens during a shutdown? Essentially, all non-essential employees are furloughed. Many essential employees are forced to continue working without pay. If you thought TSA was unpleasant before, wait till every TSA agent is not getting paid. Services like food stamps, food and workplace inspections, national parks, audits, tax return processing, all of that will be disrupted. I will also note the current contingency plan has agencies furloughing or not paying about 1.5 million workers across the country. That contingency plan is only set up for a 5-day shutdown. So if it goes longer than that, they're going to have to dramatically expand that group. Government employees, upon return to work, will get back pay essentially for missed time. Non-government employees who are impacted will not. That's contractors mainly, like people who clean offices, work in cafeterias, do a lot of other services to keep the government functioning smoothly. We've been relying more and more on contractors for a lot of those services in recent years. So in 45 days, we risk being, exactly in the same position we were on Saturday, essentially, with GOP hardliners angling for massive across the board non-defense spending cuts. Democratic Senate in position to block those, but not in a position to offer anything the hardliners will accept in the House. GOP leadership, lots of questions to who they'll be at that point. We'll be left with two options: let the government shut down, or work with Dems and anger their base. All right, I am going to point out that the Republican hardliners have already made a lot of noise about removing Speaker McCarthy from his position. It looks more and more like if he wants to hold on that, he is going to require Democrats to vote against the motion to vacate his speakership. Democrats should use this as an opportunity to get a lot of concessions, right? Our recommendation are that they pass a full budget instead of a continuing resolution, so we are not facing this problem again in a few weeks or just after the holidays or right before the election or whenever they decide to push it to. And the Democrats need to establish some red lines on what the budget cannot and must entail. What should those red lines be? No cuts to IRS funding for high earner enforcement. This was the action from last month for those of you who were able to join or watch the recording. The Inflation Reduction Act had $80 billion aimed at closing the tax gap that has been created mainly by the ultra wealthy. Republicans have been going after that money nonstop since then. No extensions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Tax cuts for corporations or high earners. This is the 2017 Trump tax law. A lot of those provisions expired earlier this year, especially some like corporate pieces, and others are set to expire in 2025. Republicans have been pushing to extend many of those, and we'll be trying again end of the year tax package. Don't need to hold a hard line on that. We need to include funding for the IRS free file pilot. This is another project that the Republicans have been going after really aggressively. Basically a program that would allow many taxpayers to file their taxes for free directly with the IRS, instead of using exploitative tax prep companies like TurboTax, H&R Block, etc., which tend to prey on a lot of people and force them into a lot of services they don't actually need.
Hello?
And then an expansion of the child tax credit and earned income tax credit. I'm sure many of you heard about this or use these tax credits when they were expanded during the pandemic. They were incredibly effective. They pulled millions of people out of poverty. They cut child poverty levels in half before they were allowed to expire this year. And we have seen a lot of those gains unwind as Republicans have been pretty stalwart and refusing to continue that expansion of the program or even rework into a slightly less extensive extension. So that's the basic ask of your representative. If Speaker McCarthy wants to keep his job, Democrats should get their pound of flesh. Full budget with no CTJ extenders, no cuts to IRS funding, no sabotaging the IRS free file pilot, and an extension of the CTC and EIT's tax cuts. We have links there for how to find your House and Senate contacts if you need help with that. And we'll be sending around follow-up that will also have that information available. And questions, comments. I'm going to stop the share really quick so I can see everybody.
I do see
go.
Laura wanted the definition of furlough if we.
Oh, sure. Furlough just basically means they're not working. So they're told to stay at home. That's what like non-essential workers, basically anybody that is not needed, however that's established, to keep really essential government services going. It's a lot of people in the Defense Department stay on, obviously. People who like manage getting Social Security checks out, things like that will stay on, but a lot of other workers, including, like I said, stuff like food safety, workplace safety, budget analysts, things like that are told to stay home.
And it's that the furloughed federal employees receive the back pay, but it's after Congress passes a budget and the furlough ends. So it's just asking them to kind of live in a limbo for a questionable amount of time. So yeah, and then the other question from Laura was, does the base actually know what Republican leadership wants to cut and how it'll impact their lives?
Yeah, so it depends. In past shutdowns, they've been slightly more specific or strategic about what they wanted to cut. The last shutdown that happened, didn't even actually shut down the entire federal government because they did manage to pass appropriations packages for certain departments. Um, excuse me. This time they were basically asking for just like broad across the board cuts to every kind of non-defense program. They were staying very non-specific about what that meant. I think to your point, no, they don't, and that is a big messaging challenge, I think, for people like us, and also just the opposing side in Congress to try to make a lot of noise about. When people learn, they do tend to get pretty upset. A lot of people say they don't want government spending, but there's not a lot of specific things they actually won't cut. So I mean, I think that there's some real kind of opportunities there.
Yeah, and I feel like historically too, doesn't like shutdowns tend to impact the Republican Party in a pretty negative way. Isn't that true? Like there's
Yeah,
think-
they've not been political winners for them in the past. It is a big part of why leadership did not want to engage in this. Voters tend to think it looks like they're incapable of running the government for some reason. So can't quite argue with that.
yeah.
Any other questions?
We
I don't-
basically asking that the whole act not be extended, or are we going only for these provisions?
Are you talking about the tax
That are objectionable, right?
on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? Is that what you're asking
Yeah,
about?
right.
Yeah, so I mean, there are specific provisions that are being discussed. I wouldn't feel the need to like get too deep in the weeds with that on your representatives. It's a lot of corporate tax extenders. I think if you
Right.
say that, that covers the breadth of what we're talking about most urgently. And then in 2025, a lot of the personal tax exemptions are set to expire, including some things that are kind of even more abused than they were designed to be, like pass-through income and things like that. I wouldn't worry too much about getting into the like section 32A. I think if you tell them more broadly you don't want extensions of the Trump tax cuts, they'll understand what you're talking about, and be able to handle that.
And Donna
That's a
just
good question though.
put a question in the chat, which is all the items listed, tax credits for children, et cetera, negotiable. I would think that the free e-file pilot could be negotiable if necessary over the other three.
My general take on that is it is not sort of our job as an organization, or I would say y'all's job as personal advocates to talk yourself down on your demands. If the party decides to negotiate, you know, that's going to be something they do. I would not encourage them to start from a bad footing, or come to the table with a soft proposal to begin with. I would say on specifically the child tax credit EITC, I don't think anybody is expecting any sort of expansion of it to look quite like what was included in the American Rescue Plan. That was a very large expansion of those programs. The thing people seem to care about the most when I talk to advocates kind of more directly involved in the child health welfare work is full refundability, so people aren't paying on that tax credit as income, and then monthly payments, which was a big part of what came out of the CTC and made people's income a lot more predictable. It did a lot to reduce reliance on like payday lenders and other things like that to get people trapped into some pretty bad debt situations.
Yeah, and the other thing to point out about the child tax credit is that when it was implemented, we had a historic 46% decline in the US child poverty rate. Like that is a massive amount for the children and for the futures. Like that's a lot, and we need that. So I don't know.
Also, Laura, to your point about are you talking about the IRS program that already exists for directly filing, or is this a separate
No, it's
third
just
party?
an online tax thing that I've used for years. I mean, it just sort of helps you fill them out yourself. And
Yeah.
if you don't have a whole lot of deductions, which most people who are in the income brackets that need their taxes to be free, I've done it for probably 3 or 4 years. They obviously hope for people with more complex tax things, so that then they can charge you for, like $9 if I had business income or something like that. So it's just an online way to fill out the taxes, and it's done by a for-profit company, but
Yeah. I'll just say I think a lot of kind of what the pushback against like Equifax tax, TurboTax, et cetera, is that they've been spending a lot of money suppressing like websites like that, making them very hard to find online, using search engine tools, including some direct file options. They've also they're legally required to offer a free tax service, which they make almost impossible to find on their website, and they push you really aggressively into the pay for ones. They're just a completely unnecessary middleman when the IRS can just kind of be
well,
handling
that's
this directly.
But
okay.
it is a good it's a good resource to know of, though, because it's good to be able to point people, or at least if they know, if we hear people in the community talking about needing that, it's a good resource to at least know that it exists, or be able to navigate that site knowing there's a free option, because I think a lot of times people just don't know, and taxes are already stressful enough. So, you're going to go right for it. So I appreciate all resource sharing is good. So I appreciate that. And then Ted asked, does the GOP seek to target the proposed reduction in IRS funding to certain areas, like hiring staff, new technology, et cetera?
So they have been going for pretty across the board cuts to this funding, which is particularly egregious because a lot of it actually went to taxpayer services, like just helping you get an answer when you call the IRS for things, based stuff like that. I don't know how many of you have had to engage with that before, but the taxpayer services has been struggling for a long time. So a lot of that funding went to that, and it's been incredibly effective already. Their big problem with the funding is definitely the enforcement mechanisms. If they could get rid of all 80 billion, they would. Their initial budget proposals, I think in total, cut 67 billion of the 80. So they're going pretty aggressively.
Yeah.
And Jim, I'll agree. I will say, I think the child tax credit piece are obviously a lot more like evocative and probably end up helping a lot of people more directly. I think the free file piece is fairly egregious, just as it's the Republicans doing a lot of handiwork for TurboTax, who are spending tens of millions of dollars on a lobbying campaign against this tool. So, I think that's we can try to walk and chew gum at the same time on that for sure. But I would agree that obviously the CTC is going to be more hugely impactful if we could get it extended long term.
Yeah. But I think also we're at a point now with everything going on where might as well shoot for, I don't know, I've done a lot of advocacy work, and like you come in with a list of like, here's what we want done. And then, you have your like big budget items and maybe 2 actually go through, but I feel like that's a lot of times an approach to this.
Yeah, and my other just thing I'll flag is that the free file budget is for the pilot program is already in there. Like they already have that money. The Republicans have been trying to target it in their budget as like basically defunding the program and blocking future funding for it. So that's part of the issue as well.
Yeah, so we already made the investment as a nation. It's just now they're trying to stop that. Yeah, that's a bummer. Does anyone have any more questions?
I do, if I could ask it.
Yeah.
is there a way that you can, or maybe it exists already, a comparison chart? Like when they talk about tax cuts and how important that is, and that's what they promote all the time. Like on one side saying, okay, then if they do this, or the way it's happening already, this is what it looks like. People on one side, the poor, the middle class, the average American, this is what you will lose. And on the right or the left or whatever, this is what the wealthiest people gain or have already by doing this. Because I look at it as tax cuts equal tax breaks for the people who don't need tax breaks, and cuts to services to everybody else. That things, and sometimes people don't realize that unless they can see it fairly simply, you know, in a chart or a list, rather than having a lot of explanation, which might be needed to help fill in the gaps, but to make it clearer for people to see very practically, very immediately, because generally the people that promote it are real savvy about the way they present it, and people are kind of snowed or just it blows right by them. So do you have something like that? Is it possible to create something like that? I'll give you an example. There's a book, and I can't find it right now, but of people complain about taxes, but they don't realize all the things they get from taxes, like farmers with subsidies and child tax care credits and money for housing and things like that. The people that complain about it don't realize, oh yeah, hey, I guess I do have some positives that come from the money of roads and bridges and fire and police and all those things. So just a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, we can definitely send around some visualizations. It's a great idea. So that'll be, well, we'll get some stuff in the follow-up materials for y'all.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
can, we can have our graphic. And if you guys ever want graphics to like share on social media and share with friends on like Facebook or Instagram, we're happy to, make those. There's some on our site. I don't think there's anything like that, but just so you know, as a resource, let me pull it up. We had a few. Sorry. I'll find them and drop in the chat. But yeah, I mean, but I do agree, a lot of times these issues, we talk about them in these rooms where everyone's kind of on the same page or maybe has the same similar background, but it's really hard to explain it so anyone can understand it. I think that's like a big challenge in advocacy and policy is, how do we shape this so people can understand what's at stake with this. So always happy to really make those things work. So yeah, I love the suggestion, and we'll try to get some of that out there. Let me see if we have these somewhere.
Oh, good question.
Fred, yes, so we have been following that
You should
very
tell them who
closely.
who's cited in the Moore case, Dylan.
Yeah, some of you might remember our presentation on the Oligarch Act a couple months back. It did make an appearance in a lot of amicus briefs from conservatives filed on the Moore case. Adam has just thrown into the chat an article that was written by our senior tax policy advisor and a colleague he works closely with about the Moore case and the kind of dangers it poses and some of the things it says about the modern Supreme Court. Would definitely encourage people to read that. We'll include that in follow-up materials, maybe, Kat, if people are interested in learning more. And I think that would probably be a good thing to put together a presentation on in the near future. But they will be hearing that case at the start of their next session. We'll probably have a decision sometime in the summer. So stay tuned. There are a lot of ways that case can come out, some of which only have a minor impact and some of which throw our entire tax system into limbo. So yeah, we're watching that very closely.
Dylan, did you want to take a second just to, when we're talking about IRS funding and what it means, the widened letter that came out so folks can see the impact of it or be aware of it?
I don't have that handy, but we can send that around. But yes, there has been some information already released on like how impactful that enforcement funding has already been and how much they have been able to focus on high level enforcement and turn away focus from people who claim the EITC or something like that, which has been disproportionately impacting poor people and people of color who are easier to audit than a very rich person, which is what the IRS kind of gets forced into when they're resource strapped.
So the number on the letter was 1.4 million wealthy people evade $66 billion a year in taxes. And that's just that by itself, let alone all the rest of the folks who are evading. So that's a start. Before we've gotten anywhere else.
All right.
I just dropped in the chat. There's some graphics there. Those are a little bit more general, so we'll work on making more graphics if people want to share. But yeah, I think we're fired up. Hopefully we can stop the next shutdown. But yeah, we'll send out a recording of this video, graphics, the next steps, the script, and all the contact information for everybody. And yeah, we're excited for it.
Appreciate y'all joining.
I just put in that book I referred to. It's in The Submerged State by Suzanne Mittler. It's about programs of people. They ask them, do you use a social no? And then they listed all of them and, oh, I guess I did. So people have to realize that there's things they're actually taking advantage of that they don't realize. So I think that would help across the board. So, you know, I think that message to hammer home will really make a difference to people because everybody cares about their money all the time. You know, the economy is a big one. So I think the more that that's done, the better for everybody. So thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, no problem. And Laura, that's a good point. I mean, I think, yeah, the more we talk about this and find ways to really connect with people on this message, the better. But yeah, it's, you know, we can try to make a wide variety of graphics and stuff and just see how we like them. And maybe next time we'll talk more about that issue and then have some of those ready for you. That's no problem. We can work on that for sure.
The other thing real quick is I heard Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez say the other day, the numbers of voters within the individual district members, like, you know, Bobert's district, this many voters, or not voters, citizens, paychecks basically, that they would go without. And it's kind of like, well, maybe we just need to get a little calling tree to be reaching out to people in those districts saying, do you realize your friends and neighbors are going to lose their checks? They're going to have nothing if we have a shutdown. So
yeah, if we have the will to do that, I'm super into that idea. I mean, direct action is important, and we could even do a postcard campaign too, you know, do a postcard campaign and a phone bank. Yeah. Reach out to gep@gmail.com, or sorry, gep@patrioticmillionaires.org. And you know, if you're interested in doing some extra stuff, you know, maybe we could do a postcard campaign between now and that next vote and see, you know, what trouble we can kick up, because why not? So there's one thing I'm into, it's getting in trouble, because why not? Yep, millionaires.org. Yep. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much. And we will see you next time. And you should, when you registered, it should be the same thing, but we'll have it in the recap email tomorrow. So if you don't have it, we'll have it there, I promise. So yeah.
So are you going to leave the chat on for a little while so I can go through and copy?
Sure. Yeah. I'll hang out for a minute. No worries. I'm in no rush. I think I'm just releasing Dylan because he's not feeling well and he got through all his stuff and he did a wonderful job. So thank you, Dylan, for hanging in. We
Appreciate it, everybody.
Grateful, but you know,
have you
no
tested
rest.
for COVID?
I did. It's negative.
Oh, okay, because I have a couple friends that sound like you and they were positive.
Yeah, I did multiple tests. I'm pretty sure I have the flu, which is ironic because I did just get a flu shot. But I'm going to the doctor tomorrow, so we'll find out for sure.
Okay,
We'll put it in the recap email, whatever's going on. Just, you know. Thanks, everyone.
So I would be willing to do a postcard campaign.
Okay, great. Yeah, so reach out. We can let me talk it over with the team, but I'm happy to get something set up. We could figure that out.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. Yeah.
okay, and I think,
If anything's missing too, I think the chat gets saved somehow. So if you
oh, okay.
something and need it, just reach out to us and we can track it down somehow. Might take me a few days because I'm not the most tech savvy, but I will get it done eventually.
Well, just realizing I should just like start where I think the first thing was and copy the whole thing and then paste it over into my notes and then go back and delete out the parts I don't need.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Try and do that. Oh, but that might actually work.
There you go.
Try that. Start a new note just to make sure. It does. Okay. Thank you so much for your help.
Of course. Well, thank you. Thanks for being excited and working on this.
Yeah. And I think that basically I keep trying to enter using my Wild Weeder address, but it won't let me into my Zoom thing that way. So I ended up going in and having to reapply from the Zoom website. And I
Yeah.
think what happens is I have 2 emails.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
one is, so I think I just need to sign in on that email instead of signing.
Yeah. I'm never sure with Zoom. I wish I could give you a solid, here's the answer, but
Yeah.
Adam can attest to my many Zoom struggles. I don't really know. I
Almost
went to a webinar about it to try to get better, but
okay.
A lot of
Thanks.
trial and error. It's fine.
that's right. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate
Yeah,
your
be in touch.